We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters, the three amigos, the perfect way to kickstart your Newcastle United weekend. And as always, joined by George, Mitch and Steve. Good evening, chaps.
Hello. Evening, everyone.
Good to see you. 90 minutes tonight, folks. We'll be finished by 7 o'clock. It's Good Friday, and I'm sure you've all got lots of other things to be doing, but we didn't want to miss out on giving you the three amigos fix. And yes, lots of stories emanating from Eddie Howe's press conference. Blue Rhythm Boy was straight in with this. He said, listening to Howe's presser, such a farce. The Botman situation, nobody stepped in, stopped him playing despite carrying a bad injury. Needs to be reflection and changed on the medical side ASAP. And just scrolling down a little bit further to says Botman injured ACL and face surgery that could ruin his career. About 25% recovered to former glory. He chose no surgery and was out for 3 months. 2, if he'd had surgery, he would have been back maybe June and missed Euros. After ACL surgery, no guarantee he plays for his country again. And 3, an educated risk not to have surgery. He's no worse off than he was at the start, and he gave himself a chance of going to a major tournament. Always two sides to the coin. Chippers chips in with, regarding Botman, for me, someone at the club's medical and coaching staff needs to be stronger. He was risking himself playing with this. Surely this needs explaining to him that the damage that he could do. As always, George, a particular topic splits fans. None of us are medical experts. There may be 1% of the population of Newcastle fans are qualified to speak about ACLs, injuries, and whether it's a good idea to play on an injury or not. But most of us are fans who've got an opinion, who will be disappointed that somebody who we were defining as Rolls Royce a few months back is now like a Morris Minor. And is it his fault? Is it the medical staff's fault? Whose fault is it? But ultimately, George, it's a debate which has got the fans talking again. It's disappointing. We're without them now until December. But what did he make of Eddie's press conference today?
Well, I wish it was new, because for me it isn't. I think I've told you all that the last thing that they would allow us to do when I was around, and that's so many years ago, it's ancient history. They would never take the player's word. Alec Much, the physiotherapist, would take them in the treatment room on their own. And if there was a horrible scream after 10 minutes, you knew you weren't playing. If he was all right, you might get a chance to get on. The crucial thing for me that comes out today is that Botman's not a medical professional either. He should be the last person making decisions about whether he should play on an injury of any kind. And apparently that's what's happened. He said he was fine. He'd rather play on rather than have an operation, etc., etc. He should have been on a specialist slab, getting absolutely every test possible. And then the specialist saying yeah or nay. Not Botman, nor even our medical staff, to be perfectly honest. If it's as bad as that, it really needs higher than professional. It needs a super professional to make decisions like that with all the modern equipment that they can sound out all the issues about displacement, about meniscus breaking and all that sort of thing. That can all be seen these days. And for them to sit and say, well, Botman didn't want to, he wanted to play on and have a chance. His idea about playing on just might, and God forbid I'm wrong, just might have cost him his career. I mean, that's how serious it is. That's where we are. And Rolls Royce now, Morris Minor, he's not even a bloody three-wheel buggy for me at the moment, because he's absolutely in the clarts until somebody with some skill starts to put him right. And then when he's right, he's got rehabilitation for a very long time. It would be tragic if that affects that lad's career, because there's no doubt about it. For me, his first season, he was the Premier League's top centre-back, no question. In football terms and tackling and everything about him was absolutely class. But the minute he got that injury, the doubts started to show. And he was hesitant in tackles. He was hesitant in clearances. That horrible clearance at Chelsea where the ball didn't hardly go 3 yards. That's all about in his mind, not in his bloody legs. But it was his legs that put it in his mind, because he was worried about what the damage he might do. And that goes for anybody. That's not just Botman. So it's a mess. It's a mess. And if it's as is being quoted, Eddie Howe's quoted it, the people that stood there and let him make those decisions, they should be on their way as well. That's not a decision the player should be making. Shouldn't even be near up to him to decide where to play. Yes, when he's absolutely fit and ready, they might take him out on the pitch for a kick in and all that sort of thing, just to make that last minute make sure there's no twinges and that kind of thing. Well, we see it happen now sometimes, and that's all right. But that's as much as input that Botman should have had. He shouldn't have made make decisions about whether he played on or not. That's negligence. In fact, it's almost criminal negligence for me. But even if it was that, he might actually have risked his career, and that's tragic for a superb young man who was it's just tragic. International career before him. The Newcastle centre back for the next 10 years. Our centre pole of our defence that nobody will ever get back, and that was evident in the European games. He was as comfortable in those games as he was in our league games. It's an absolute tragedy, but a one of, sadly, of our making. It's been handled so badly, and there really needs to be a root and branch investigation as to all the things that have gone on, because none of it's been very good. And as a fan, of course, as I keep reminding everybody, that's why I'm here. I lose to see one of the players that makes my day on a Saturday when I go to St James's Park. He's not even going to be on the bench. He's not even going to be around, mostly because he's going to be in recovery, and that's just tough. But worst of all, very tough on the lad himself. But he's had his own part to play, and I hope he doesn't live to regret it. And as I say, if I go back to Alec Much, the guy in the white coat used to stand in the tunnel at the matches when I was around, he wouldn't let anybody near the pitch until he was sure they were fit. And he had various means of making sure that was the case. But it was never up to the player, never. Newcastle have a dreadful history of knee injuries going back. George Dolph, Irvin Natteris, Tony Green. The list goes on. Now, when it was Tony Green's day, the rumor was that Newcastle was so keen to get the insurance money, the Tony Green was allowed to pack in. But I don't think that was true for 1 minute. But you can get a list as long as your arm of knee injuries at Newcastle United that have destroyed very, very talented players to the detriment of the club for a long period of time. Please God, this isn't the next one, because he's brilliant, too good to lose. But it needs a really root and branch examination of where things went wrong. And starting, if Botman did say he wanted to play, well, that's where they should start. Should get them all together and say, hey, none of you decide how he plays. We decide how you play.
Yeah, Daniel says his body isn't owned by the club, so it's up to him to be operated on, ultimately potentially a career ruiner, though. Lots of people talking about that, Mitch. It's his body. It's up to him whether he has an operation or not. I guess.
Speaking medically, mate, if you look at the consent forms I have to have signed here in Dubai, just to do a checkup, that's where it would give you an idea of the whole concept of consent. And you can't make somebody undergo surgery, even if perhaps in my dad's day, without like much, when the players were very much owned by the clubs. But I think nowadays that's not something you're going to see. It sounds like there's been conflicting advice from specialists. That I find peculiar. I would also like to know where Botman's other advice was coming from. Has he been to see the Dutch team doctor? Has he been to see somebody back in Holland? Has he been to see somebody recommended by his agent? There's very, very, very strange situation there about how he was getting the advice and how you take it. Because quite frankly, if you've got a partially torn ACL, it will not heal on its own. It never will heal on its own. It will always need a surgery at some stage. Surgery was always coming for him. I think we got a lot more pitch time out than probably we should have. However, should the club have taken it out of his hands by simply just not playing him? If they think he's not right, just don't play him. Because I'm sorry, I think it's pretty clear to us, medical or not, that wasn't the same player.
Yeah.
That we had. If you want to make the car analogy, he's a Rolls-Royce owner who's been advised he needs a repair done, and he's gone and had it done in a backyard garage underneath the arches rather than taking it to Rolls-Royce. And now he's paying twice for the same repair. Because I find it amazing that anybody said, no, you can recover from this without surgery, because that doesn't seem to be the way it goes. Certainly not with an ACL. There's no blood supply to it. It's not like it'll just magically regenerate. Even if you do regenerative medicine with it, you'd need an operation of some kind. And if you remember, back when this all started, and I know our medical team have taken a bit of a hammering for it, but it sounds like our medical team have been advising surgery from the get-go, and Botman's declined. Okay, so we've got to work with that under the deems of consent. If you remember when this all happened, I've mentioned it a couple of times. I spoke to a guy called Dr. Jesse Morse. You'll see us interacting with him on Twitter. He's a sports medicine specialist in the US, regenerative medicine specialist in the US. And his first question to me was, what's the player doing here? Straight away, he came to me and said, look, I've got players that I see in American football will come to me and tell me, no, look, I'm fine. I can run through a brick wall, and their legs hanging on by a thread, but they'll still see it because they want to play. They don't want to let their team down. They don't want to let their fans down. They just want to play. And he was the first to suggest to me that Botman had some sort of leverage here to say no to surgery. And that seems to be the case. I find it interesting that Eddie's picked now to effectively reveal what was going on. Perhaps they've been trying to protect everybody, and the medical staff have taken the brunt to try and take the pressure off Botman. But again, it's quite clear he's played for us when he hasn't been 100%. He never looked 100%. He made some bad decisions. He's made tentative tackles. Some of the behaviour was somebody who was not at 100%. And we could all see that. And so we've always known it was a complicated one, and we always knew there was more going on in the background. But so now Botman's in a situation where he's got no choice but to have the operation. So we'll get on with it and we'll move on, and we'll just hope when he comes back from this, he does come back the way Tino Livramento came back after his ACL. Players can return and still be brilliant after an ACL these days. It's not the big all be all and end all that it was. The surgical techniques are now much better, much more subtle, and much less impactful in the long term, provided he follows the recommendations after the surgery. That concerns me, because he's already shown he's not one to be told what to do.
Yeah.
He's going to tread his own path. So I think it's how is this Eddie's way of saying to Botman, will you listen this time? I don't know, but it stirred the pot a little bit more. The ultimate sanction, if the physios and Eddie felt he wasn't right, the next question is don't play him. Sit him on the bench. However, without this information being released, what would have we all been doing? Why is he on the bench? Why is he not playing? Is he not fit? What the medical team doing? So, cannot win. So, but why he cannot win is ultimately there's been a lack of synchronicity between the player and the medical staff and the manager, and as a result, like committee decisions are, it's a rubbish one.
Steve, I mean, we know there can be absolutely nothing happening at St James's Park, and we'll always find something to talk about, as a Newcastle fan. But we've not been short of stories, and it's all been medical stories this year. If it hasn't been Lewis Miley getting an injury this week, it's been Sven Botman. He's not the same player since he came back. Now he's out. Harvey Barnes with an injury which we can't even define. We just know it's a rare foot injury. Dan Burn breaking his back. Add to that, the situation that we've had with Callum Wilson, who a lot of us refer to as being made of fiberglass. It's just been a season to forget. The Queen, God bless her, when she was alive, called that particular year that the royal family had the Annus Horribilis. That's what this has been for Newcastle, because I've never known an injury crisis in all my time as a Newcastle fan from '84. George goes back to the 1950s. He can't remember a season as bad as this. So it's unbelievable. But the Botman story is one which, it's caused debate on social media. What's your view on it?
It was a mistake, first of all, that he didn't have the operation, and whoever decided, wherever the final decision was made, that was wrong. It was inevitable that an operation was needed. I think we've heard George and Mitch both agree on that one. What I would say is, listening to the press conference today, and I'll take away from the actual physicalities of the injury and take away, whether he should have had the operation last week, the week before, 3 months ago, whatever. What I would say is that, did Eddie go into some sort of protective mode during his press conference? Was he trying to protect his medical staff? Did he throw Botman under the bus a little bit in terms of laying all of the blame on Sven Botman, pointing out to us that as supporters at his press conference to the press, that it was Sven's decision that he wanted to play. He didn't want an operation. I found that very, very strange thing to do. I would have probably preferred to hear from Eddie that it was a collective decision by the club, by the medical staff, by his training coaches, and by himself and the player, that they felt as though he would be able to get through till the end of the season and see how it went. But he didn't do that. He laid it on the line that it was Botman's decision, and his decision was final. Seen lots of comments down the side saying, "Oh, you can't force someone to have an operation," blah blah blah. Fine, I don't necessarily agree nor disagree with that. But what I would say is that the club's gone into a protective mode on that to protect not their asset, but protect the processes around it. He's actually come out and said, as far as we're concerned, the coaching, the physio team, the medical staff wanted him to have the operation, and we didn't go ahead. That if that had have come up on the little monitor that the player was carrying around, that he was out of sync, he was out of tune, he wasn't putting forward the normal 11 kilometers that you would expect, he was seeing a drop off, etc. then they would have gone by the stats and they wouldn't have played him. That's the way that they operate. But on this particular one, knowing that the lad's got this knee problem, they've said, okay, then let's just carry on. They've given him a resting period and that's it. So I find it all very, very mysterious. I find it very disturbing. I find it quite disappointing. But I wonder, as I say, whether Eddie's protecting the club and protecting his team. Because let's face it, if you were a potential signing for Newcastle United and you thought, I had an injury and they're still going to play us, I'd go to another club and they're going to say, if you have an injury, we'll operate straight away. And probably that player who comes to the club may sit there and go, you know what? I don't think they look after you quite well medically. Look at the injuries Newcastle United have had recently. We're now hearing that Botman didn't have an operation when it was his ACL that had gone. What else has been going on? Who else has been forced onto the pitch and forced to play while they've been carrying an injury, etc., etc.? So there's all sorts of things that could go on. At the end of the day, there's only Eddie that knows the truth. And the words that come out of his mouth, we just have to accept. But we can criticize and we can question. And I think it's one of those that's going to run and run and run. We'll still be talking about Botman in, I think, 10 months' time, because I don't think he'll be back within the next 10 months. I think we're probably looking at something like Emil Kraft, where he was out for almost 12. That's how serious I think this is, especially when he had the tear in the first place, and then it's completely gone. And I think that there've been swelling there, and there've been all sorts of other issues. And I think he sounds like the sort of player, as Mitch mentioned there, that I'll run through the wall, I'll be back straight away. But now they've got to decide. Hang on, do we want him back and pushing himself for after 7 months or 8 months, or should we stick to what the medical team says now? The specialist that being. And I've come across specialists, and as you know, my nephew had his ACL operation not too long ago. And as the specialist said there, if you follow me and you follow my instructions to the letter, I'll know that you'll be back playing and you'll be back kicking a ball, but you do not kick a ball until I tell you. And if that's 9 months before you even kick a ball, then so be it. And that's someone who's not a professional. That's someone who's a young lad starting off on his career at 17-year-old. And the specialist saying to him, you cannot kick a ball until I tell you. If you do, I can guarantee that it'll go again at some point in the future, because of the type of operation that we've given you. It's disappointing. It's sad for the player. It's sad for the club. It's sad for us supporters that we're not going to see him in a black and white shirt for quite a long time. It also gives us a bit of a headache on what we do in the close season in terms of, do we look for a replacement for him? Do we look for a stopgap replacement? Is that stopgap replacement Lascelles, who's all of a sudden being given another extension on his contract? Or are we looking for a big signing who, let's face it, potentially is a replacement for Botman? And then what do we do then? Do we wait for Shaw to drift off in a couple of seasons and Botman is his replacement, but Botman's out of the team? Who knows? There's lots of questions that are going to be coming to the fore in the next 6 to 8 months, but I don't think we'll see him back within at least 10 to 12 months, Steve.
Yeah, it's going to be a long wait, and then you've just got to hope that he comes back as good as he was, if not better. But long way to go for Sven Botman. We do wish him well. Only 90 minutes tonight. We've all got things that we want to do, but as always, on the Three Amigos, we do like to have a little break with something like this. Tweet of the week will be back next week, but we've got a lot of lookalikes, which we didn't get through last week, and a few additional ones this week. There's been a couple of late ones in, which I'll keep on next week when we're back to 2 hours. Andy Carroll and The Edge. Not bad. That's a Tom Dixon special, that one.
It's not The Edge from you too, by the way.
It's not. No, I think this one was sent in as Mick Hucknall, although it did have a Star Trek feeling as well around it. So thanks for that. I can't remember who sent that one in. This was good though. Again from Rita. Hartley Hare from Pipkins, and Liverpool's manager, Clippity Klopp. And Martin Skirtle and Wentworth Miller, which I think we've had one of those before, but it's still worth a mention. And Nanny and Michael Jackson in his early days. That's pretty good. That's another one from Tom. Thank you, Tom. Joachim Lowe and Randy Marsh from South Park. And I own Mitch, he says, minus the Jack and Coke. This is from Tim. He says, Mitch looks like meatloaf.
Yeah, B.
I won't do that.
Ah, very good. I'll give you the opportunity there. Paul Rocky, guess who this is? He says, Old Etonian, which of course is Steve Hasty, has become the new lead singer of Def Leppard.
Wish I had his money.
At least it's not a job.
There's a super group in the offing here.
There is.
We need one for you too, why?
Yeah, nailed it. Not quite. There's better than that. We've got this one, Captain Scarlet and Alan Hansen. Very good. And this one from Tom as well, Stephen Merchant and Klopp. You've got it in for Klopp this week, mate. You've got it in for him. Ronaldo and Craig Charles. We've not had that one before.
Oh, it's a good one, though.
Not a bad one either. Hey.
And another one from Tom, Gareth Barry and Richard Gere. I think it's just, I don't think it's a look like that more. They're both looking in the same kind of way. Bobby Charlton and Alan Thompson from the Fans Forum.
Yep.
I don't think Alan's going to be too happy about that. And Mitch. Did George cut Mitch's hair? Is this Steve Hasty? Steve, is that you?
No.
Okay. And Rob Deering and Mark Goldbridge. Pretty good, that one, Stephen.
It is, aye. It's good.
We've had this one before. Captain Black and Mikel Arteta from Derek. Always worth the show, though. And Warren Barton and Barry Venison from Scarred for Life. Spenny as a baby. That's from Andrew. Steve Hasty from Rita.
Rita, away, man.
And another Steve Hasty from Rita.
Oh, God.
Another one from Rita. Rafa Benitez and Captain Pugwash. What about this one, lads?
I can see that, yeah.
Who were those two guys?
That's Chilwell.
Chilwell. And who? It's some doll from some kind of show, but I'm not sure who that is.
It's from, that movie the South Park lot made that looks like Thunderbirds.
Got you. Right, okay, yes, I know which one you mean. It'll come back. Team America.
Team America, there you go.
I like this one. Very good. Anything like that, send them in. I've not this must be a few of them, really.
Well thought out, that one.
Clever. They are like another one from Tom, Alison and Thor. And Steve Wraith, interesting this. Is it a demon face looking Steve Hasty with short black hair, or is it a dog? Is it a lookalike, or is it a tweet of the week?
Hey.
I'll let you decide. Night Waves, we've gone back. It looks like Steve Hasty because it's in the lookalike section.
I'll let everybody else decide.
Sebastian Stan Bucky looks like a potential young Luke Skywalker for Star Wars franchise. Someone photoshopped Sebastian's face onto Mark Hamill's head to show how much they resemble each other. Even Mark Hamill agrees. Good. Very good. And another one from Tom, Phil Jones, and Rick from the Young Ones. Diego Milito and Rocky Balboa. Not bad. Last couple, Albert Einstein and Steve Hasty.
About right, Jimmy. About right. Brains.
And Steve Bruce And the pig from Pipkins, I forgot how bad that pig was.
Oh,
I never remembered the pig.
It's a bit of a cheek for the pig, though, isn't it? I mean, fancy having to carry that on your back.
And the winner this week from Tom, because he's put that many in, Paul, Shauna, and Freeman. Very good, that, Tom.
Yeah.
That's almost separated a birth, mate. Thank you for them. Keep them coming in. We will have a lot more lookalikes and tweets of the week next week. Keep them coming into the Facebook page or the Facebook group. You can find them very easily. Join them or like them or send them to us on X. Big thanks to Ifty for joining the channel. You can do that for $1.99 a month. If you want to, just click join on Facebook. Sam came in earlier. He says, have the announcements been made about Tonali being released now to distract from the points deductions from Everton, Forest and Leicester? Tonali will have done enough time, another ban not necessary. Yeah, I mean, it's been a big talking point, George. We spoke about it this week already. I think the consensus seems to be that he's not going to serve another ban. It's going to be concurrent. I think it's just the FA, could have announced this earlier, but they've chose to pick now for whatever reason they've chose to pick, and that's that. But the consensus of the media seems to be that there won't be another ban.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, but my legal head says the media don't decide things like that. People elsewhere will, and there'll be those that will be clamouring to see him punished the way that Tony was, like it or not. But if anybody's interested in that sort of problem, it's classical. He's up to his neck in trouble in Italy, and he knows it, and he's caught. He comes here. Everybody was saying how miserable when he arrived. Well, because he was miserable, because he was looking for the bloody bookies. He couldn't find the bookies to get a bet on.
Allegedly, George.
Allegedly. And he goes and does it again here. And that shows the depth of his addiction, doesn't it? When it gets you, and it's very, very difficult to shake off.
It's not a laughing matter having a gambling addiction, because there's millions of people have this. And you know what I think, George, is that he's been punished. Punishment is enough for me. He served a hell of a punishment. And at that period where we've seen now he was betting between August and October. That was before he got his punishment. He's had a 9-month punishment now, and by the time he comes back at the start of August, I think he's done the crime. I think he served the time, and I don't think he deserves another punishment.
I hope you're right, but the way our football administrators work, I wouldn't put my shirt on it. I agree with you. What he needs now, and hopefully he's getting it and hadn't been getting it, is help. I mean, what he's done, just as I say, it just shows the depth of his addiction, and the number of times I've sat in things on court and going to court with things like this. Initially, new magistrates, particularly, they want to lock everybody up that does things like that. But when they realise and they hear the whole thing and what the whole thing's meant to the families and those that have interacted with the addict, and then seeing what happens when they've been found, when they've admitted their addiction, it changes altogether. And I have lots of sympathy for the lad, as long as he's getting the right help, and I'm sure he is. But as I say, it's an example to anybody that has had nothing to do with addiction, to see what the depth of that lad's addiction was, that he could leave Italy with all that hanging around him and yet still come here and get involved in exactly the same thing again. It just beggars belief, but that's what it's like. And that's what it's like. And the other thing, people are blaming Ashworth and all sorts of people for him coming in with this problem. The other big thing about addiction is they're bloody good at hiding secrets. Secrecy is their world. And the number of times I've heard defense lawyers pleading with magistrates saying, well, the best thing that happened to him or her, it's not always a him, sometimes a her, was when they were found out, because they could release it all and take it off their back, get the load off their back and get back to something like normal. Getting found out was the first step. And now Tonali's not just being found out, he's admitted his culpability. And you're right, I agree with you, Steve, that should be the end of it. But my faith in our football administrators is on the same. I think what might happen is because it's concurrent, they might give him a suspended ban. Say that if he does it again, he'll get another suspension and leave it hanging over him for a while. And I could understand that, but it's awful. And as I say, for me, it just shows the depth of the lad's problem, the depth of his addiction, and no wonder he looked unhappy when he came here. You know, everybody was saying he doesn't look like he wants to be here. Well, of course he didn't want to be here. He knew the mess behind him, and it was following him. And unfortunately, he just made it worse. But yeah, I'm with you, Steve. I would like to think that we won't get another ban, but I'm not. My confidence in the football authorities isn't as strong as yours is, I don't think.
Yeah, Mitch, I mean, for me, you know, Mark Byers is saying, why hasn't Tonali made an apology statement to the club fans, or has he? And I missed that. I think it's the least he could do. You know, I don't disagree with Mark on that. I think the club have made a statement, you know, but maybe he's had too much to deal with. I don't know. I guess it's down to, maybe it's down to personal choice. Botman can decide whether he has an injury. Tonali can decide whether he wants to apologise or not. I mean, the bottom line is the away end is sang his name continuously since he got banned in October. You know, the fans have been behind him. So, you know, two sides to the coin for you here, I guess, Mitch. Is it, you know, the Tonali situation that he finds himself in? But
it's more complicated than that even. My initial reaction to the statement was like, oh, shite, here we go. But it made us breathe and take a step back and do some digging instead and have a little chat with a pal of mine who's still got quite close ties to the Football League and the FA, to have a little chat with a couple of the journalists who seem to be up on it. My understanding is the timing is unusual because the FA couldn't act until they had finished until the Italian FA, rather, had totally finished their concurrent investigations into everyone. That would suggest now that the Italian investigations are done. So now the FA can act. So I don't think there's any conspiracy theory in there. I think the next question would be, are they addressing the bets placed in England as part of the same betting period concurrent with the Italian FA? And that would be the suggestion, is the advice from UEFA is that the FA should do so. So therefore you can't be punished twice, effectively. However, this is paperwork that the FA need to tie up. I would suspect, and the word is that when they look at the ban that was given to the lad from Forest, which was far more bets over a period of time and more bets per month than what Tonali had done, he was given 5 months suspended. So they could easily do something like that, and to take into account time served, etc., etc. The challenge then for us and for the club is, I think there is a point in that. We've had statements from the club, but Tonali's been relatively silent. Maybe he's been advised to keep his gob shut until the FA were done, to try and again keep this sense of minimising the impact of any ban, etc. And I think it is right that some fans are saying, why are some of our away fans still singing his bloody name in the crowd? I know that the feeling was it was trying to show support and unity, and I think Eddie Howe seemed to suggest that that was something he would like. But I've also had it suggested by someone, and again, someone who should know what they're talking about, that part of the explosion that Trippier had on the pitch at the end of the one game when everything was going south was that the squad as a whole were quite frustrated at hearing Tonali's name sung when they were the ones on the pitch doing the work. They were the ones on the pitch picking injuries up because he wasn't there to take up some of the slack because of something he had done. and it's the politics, isn't it? It's the complicated internal politics. I personally have no qualms in showing the world that we're back in, because Ivan Toney coming back seems to have been treated like a bloody hero. And he's been given all sorts of bizarre interviews to the, you know, how would you feel if your star striker had been banned because of his betting practices, and the week before he's due to come back and play for you, he says, well, I'd like to sign for Real Madrid. What? And yet he's not been pulled up or put anything out at all. I find that quite peculiar, that Tonali's being held up as a very different example by many people, while Tony's having his ego massaged. And I think looking at the timeline, there's the last bet he placed was before any charges were raised and before any investigation was started. So it's not he's been doing it while he knew there was a charge on him. The only thing out of it that leaves me with, well, what else could they do? Because I do feel like it's Newcastle United and we'll have a higher power microscope put on us than anybody else, is that some of the bets were on Newcastle games. And the one that many people pointed out way back when it first broke was his strange booking for time wasting against Villa late on in that game. And I'm quite sure one of the bets they'll be looking for is, was there any money gone on, something like that. And I think if there is, that might be a different situation. We might see an extension of his ban. Maybe it's a month, maybe it's a 2. But the feeling is the general directive from UEFA is to treat it as one betting period, and therefore you can't serve 2 bans for the same offence. So I'm optimistic that we'll actually be treated fairly. But I think when the dust settles, I would also like to see a full and frank apology from Tonali, who maybe doesn't want to do it because maybe his English isn't that good or wasn't that good at the time. I would hope his English is better now because he's had plenty of time on his hands. And that would be one of the things I would have been encouraging him to make sure he did. But he looks still fully integrated with the squad. They get him involved with all these little things that they're doing for YouTube and TikTok with the Premier League and things like that. And he doesn't seem like he's an outsider or a loner. He seems very much integrated with it. And that's fair play to Eddie Howe and his team. But I think when we come out of it, there are things we've got to learn as a club out of all of this. And I do hope that Tonali understands he has a debt to pay back to us on the pitch. And I would like to see that repaid in full. Thank you very much.
Steve?
Oh, the Villa kid's not been charged with note. It seems like being a grass gets you off scot-free in Italy.
Allegedly. Steve, what's your thoughts on the whole Tonali situation? We did speak about it on Wednesday. Yeah. You didn't make it on Wednesday. What's your thought?
I'm expecting another ban, to be perfectly honest. I think the FA will want their pound of flesh. I think that's the way that the FA operate. We're not talking about the Premier League here. We're talking about the Football Association, who are alluring to themselves at times, who I don't think have any control now. They've lost all credibility, and I think if they can fine them and ban them because it makes them look powerful, then it's the sort of thing they'll come across and do. The whole situation seems to be a mess. I mean, right in the early days, we were told Tonali was betting on all sorts of things, football, blackjack, cards, using, according to the Italians, using an illegal platform. In other words, a website and app that you're not allowed to use, gambling in both online and in locations where it's illegal to do so. And they seem to be throwing the book at them because of that. The lad at Villa, apparently, according to the Italian FA, what I read was that he wasn't charged, or he wasn't given a ban of any description or charged with anything because he didn't bet on football. So then all of a sudden you sort of think, well, hang on, is when Mitch mentioned he's the grass. He's so much for Omerta in Italy, you know, in Italian sporting situations. But if the Italians let him off because he wasn't betting on football, it sounds like the Italians, despite everything that was said, threw the book at Tonali because of bets on football. But it was in Italy. That's where they had the jurisdiction. They had the jurisdiction over what he was doing in Italy over a period of what turned out to be, I think, some point going back as far as 2021, 2022. The FA are looking at bets that he's put on since he signed for Newcastle United. That's their jurisdiction. That's what they can now look at in 50 bets. And as Mitch says, the question also revolves around, has he bet on games that he played in? You know, games involving Newcastle United when he was either on the pitch or sitting on the bench. So that's quite concerning, and that's totally different to some of the other scenarios that have been thrown at us. So I don't trust the FA. I think they'll want a pound of flesh. I think they'll want to be seen to be in control, and I wouldn't be surprised if they slapped even a token 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 2 months, or whatever additional ban. And Tonali didn't get a very big fine from the Italians, so I'm anticipating the FA trying to fill their pockets by, you know, taking 6 weeks' wages off them or something ridiculous like that. You know, that's the way that they operate there. They're so sly and they're so ridiculous. But the only person who has really any say in this is the player himself. He's the one who's done the deed. We as a football club and as supporters, we suffer because we don't see him playing. The club suffers because they can't select them. The player suffers, I suppose, by not playing. But it was all on his head. He knew the rules. Everybody knows the rules. Is he just the unfortunate one that's been caught? He's not the first. He'll not be the last. I've heard many stories in the past of how footballers get round. It's interesting that in this particular instance, the Italians did mention using third parties to put bets on, third party sites, third party people, all that type of thing. I suppose what they meant by that was necessarily the platforms that he was using, third party not being legal. But I know how footballers get round gambling.
Mate, next time you're over, I'll introduce you to a mate of mine over here who used to work for Liverpool Football Club, and he had 6 accounts that he used to put bets on 4 players, but they were all in his name, and he used to collect the cash and give it to them. And one of them just gave them a credit card.
Yep. I've heard very similar in the UK, Mitch, of people who have money put into an account that they control, that they bet on behalf of a syndicate of Premier League players, and the money that's won gets divided, and that person also takes a retainer for controlling the account. So that's the way that they operate. I think the Premier League know, all the officials know, but it's a very, very difficult one to try and pin down. And I think you've got to be very, very careless to be caught. I think Joey Barton got done. Joey admitted it. We've seen Trippier got caught on a technicality of having just simply said to somebody as a joke, "You want to put your money on us going to Madrid," and the next thing you know, somebody's like, "Yeah, laid a bet down." So you know, then he got, I think, what did he get? 12 weeks, something like that. So you know, this is that was a technicality. So just using your case as an example, you can see the FA coming down on Tonali and not wanting it to be run concurrent because they'll want it to be under their jurisdiction.
Challenge is though, Steve, they've been very inconsistent in some of the punishments they've handed down.
Yeah.
What they did to Tony versus what they did to Truffalo. Wasn't there a non-league player who's basically been banned for 2 years? And everybody's like, hang on a minute, how can he be banned for that long when you've only done 6 months for Tony and a suspended sentence for him? And I think there's such a unreliable consistency in how they're approaching this that we're right to be a little bit nervous, no matter how much reassurance you get from people who seem to know what they're talking about.
Well, let's face it, when it comes to legal situations involving football, involved in the Premier League, involved in the EFL, or involved in the FA. The only word that will ever be used consistently is inconsistent. Let's face it, because they are inconsistent in everything they do. I mean, you just have to look at, you find a club 6 points, but you knock 2 off. I mean, I've noted to you guys that the 2 that they docked off for Nottingham Forest. It's just so now, if you looked at it, if you look at it all in the round and you go, Forest got 6 point ban, 6 point deduction, but 2 were taken off for good behaviour, for being nice and being pleasant and agreeing with me. It just so happens that Brennan Johnson played 4 games for Nottingham Forest. So is that 1 point for every game that he played? You could look at it that way, and you could say, well, the lad played. So what we've actually done, but we're not going to publicise it. We'll find you a point for every game that the lad played. And no wonder the Everton one is a ridiculous situation as well. But so's the argument around it. So's the comparison. It's all a joke. And as I say, the only consistency with football is the inconsistency of the decision-making process.
Okay, we are 50 minutes into the show, only going to do 90 minutes. George, I'm going to bring you in. I've had to mute you, George, because with you not having your headphones on, Neil gets a bit of feedback. I've texted you about it, but you mustn't have seen the text. But go on, George. We're going to say something.
Yeah, people shouldn't think this is new. The 1960s, Everton and Sheffield Wednesday players, Peter Eustace, Peter Swan, got big bans for betting, and they had a syndicate between them, 2 teams. So it's not what this is not new. And the other one is the people on the strap have been putting things in about, isn't it hypocritical that they're fining players for betting and they're taking all the money they can get off gambling companies? Yeah, it is hypocritical, but isn't that football at the moment, particularly administration? So yeah, do you want us to put me headphones in, Steve?
Yeah, if you can do, George. It's just Neil's getting a bit of feedback, that's all. Okay. And it's just because you haven't got your headphones on. But we're 55 minutes in. Only doing an hour and a half tonight, as it is Good Friday, and we all have things to do. So we do have a day I met. The day I met, we're asking you to send in photographs of you meeting Newcastle United players or people from behind the scenes, past or present. And thanks to Brian for this one. Met this legend at Cheshire Oaks Retail Park. There's Brian with Shay Given. Thank you for sending that in. If you've got a photo, send it to us on Facebook, our group or page. You can like or join or send them to us on X so we can play this wonderful music. Okay, I've got a couple of questions in YI-Man says, question of the panel, do you think we need to go back to basics and bring back the ice bath, wheelie bins and the paddling pools? We had far less injuries back then. Great idea, that, to be honest. Like, get that paddling pool blown up. Gary Laverty, good evening. New name in the chat there. He says, question for the lads. Do you think Newcastle will try to get signings done before the Euros? And how reasonable is that to expect? So, George, back to you, mate. You got your headphones in. Do you think Newcastle will do the business early, is what Gary's asking?
I would like to hope they would, but I don't think they will. History is that they drag it out as far as they can. And I don't see that changing. I wish they would, though, because... it would show. I would like them to do something early to show intent to the fans. The fans are due some good news on the transfer front, and that would be one good way of doing it. The only problem is, I think, is that if they're doing it early, they'll get charged top dollar. But I'd like to see them do it early. It would make such a difference in lots of ways. But for me, not least, it would give the fans some hope and some. something to look forward to in a way in which they haven't had for the last 3 windows for me, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, short answer is yes, I would like them to, but hand on heart, no, I don't think they will.
Okay, Neil.
I'll be surprised if much business is done before the Euros because of accounting periods and FP or PSR, however you want to put it. I think a lot of people will be biding their time, be making sure that they're staying within boundaries. And I think teams will be reluctant to let assets who could get more valuable during the Euros go before they maximise their value. I would always like to see early signings. We just don't do it that often. But that's not, I think, because of the lack of trying. I think it's because that's the way the market is at the minute. Because of windows, because of FFP and many other things, we now see a month's worth of business squeezed into 48 hours, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. But I think particularly with the Euros, there are some people who have assets that could gain significantly in value if they have a good tournament. And so you're not going to see much movement until that happens.
Steve?
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely, 100%. The Euros is the defining factor for a lot of top class players. There's the risk factor as well, that you sign somebody that's still playing in the Euros and they get an injury. Not that would be the be all and end all of your decision making, but I think there is also that aspect that if you've got the money, it makes a big difference splashing out at the end of May compared to splashing out at the end of August from a cash flow point of view. So I think that there's more likelihood that you'll see the business at the tail end of the transfer window rather than at the beginning.
Okay, well, hope that answered your question, Gary. Why I'm and also is this Paolo Maldini was sought out Tonali when he arrives as Ashworth's replacement. What do you make on the rumours that Maldini and Viana are linked with the role? I mean, still no news, George, on who the next director of football will be. Steve Nixon was putting himself in the frame a couple of weeks ago, but do those kind of names instill you with confidence?
Well, they instill me with the view that people are trying to put names in the hat, as far as I'm concerned. That's all that is. It could be agents, it could be anybody, but it's certainly not the sort of those particular two aren't the sort of names I would see. And as to being Nixon, I'm sorry, I'm not even sure he's the best scout, never mind director of football, in my opinion, anyway. No, it's Newcastle United, and we're going to get every name under the sun like we usually do with players, and that's what we're going to have to get used to, and hopefully, touch wood, that the people in St James's Park, the owners and directors, are doing their due diligence on all the people that get thrown away. Have they employed an agency to go and look for somebody? That's the kind of thing that might happen. But what we don't want is a clone of what we've just got rid of, because everything about the man that's just left with is now coming out of the woodwork to say that he was not a success at all. So due diligence can get somebody, but those names don't fill me full of hope at all. What they do say to me is that that's clickbait. That's agents getting their clients' jobs, as far as I'm concerned. But they're not the people I would want. And I hope above all hope that the club do some serious digging before they actually make an appointment.
Mitch, I would love Paolo Maldini in his prime as a player. Like, I'm not so sure about director of football. Yeah. Like, maybe we should have gone down the road of maybe Les Ferdinand, if that's the case.
I don't know. He did quite well in that role in Milan, but was probably too invested in the club. I think Paul Mitchell at Monaco seems to be the one that sort of is the best kind of fit to me. Whether that materialises or not, I don't know. Some of the other names, yeah, not terribly inspiring. I think we just have to let the club get on and do what they think's right. It's as simple as that. And trust, like we've been saying, trust the process. I've heard a few things behind the scenes about some of the off-the-pitch appointments Ashworth made and people not being terribly impressed with some of them, in particular from the data and analytics point of view. When you compare to appointments at Liverpool and Man City, for example. And maybe he's got a little too far out of his comfort zone. And now he's seen an opportunity to join his pals that he wants to start a player analysis system with and sell to other clubs. I gather there's been further talks this week and we're no further on in agreeing a package, because Man U seem to think because they're Man U they can do what they want and they can ignore things like contracts. So crack on, lads, and we'll happily have them on guard and leave, and we'll come to an agreement when it suits us. We are in the driving seat, not you. Funny that. It's a position Man United aren't used to. They used to bullying people in getting their own little way when they stamp their feet. Well, it's not happening, is it? You'll go when it suits us and when you agree to pay whatever is agreed to pay in the contract. Simple as that. And we're under no obligation to do anything else because he's asked to leave. And that's the when you hear people saying, well, that player's obviously staying just to get his wages, why doesn't he ask for a transfer? Because if he asks for a transfer, he foregoes all sorts of things, loyalty bonuses and you name it. Because he's actually asked to go, it triggers things in his contract, and that's the only way out. Whether he's been convinced by Man U that they held some sort of sway, or whether he's just thought that they would just pay it, and it turns out Jim Ratcliffe's as poor a billionaire as Mike Ashley was, who knows? But either way, it's quite nice to be shoe on the other foot, isn't it? And then up to us who will bring in. Do we bring someone who we need to bring someone who vibes with and vibes with everything that's going on in the background? Because if I'm led to believe what I've been told about certain things going on within transfer windows and how upset Howe and Ashworth seem to be with each other at times, then we need to correct and address that. But we also need somebody in who's not so close to Howe that if Howe goes, he's going to chuck his toys out the cot as well, and abandon will even then 2 rows to fill. So I think it is a very important appointment to make to get right. And I don't care how long that takes, because we seem to be managing okay. And do you know what? In the short term, because we've got so much we need to address, it might work out in my favour that we've got sort of an interim way whereby Eddie feels he's got a little bit more input and control and he's happy and the squad becomes a bit happier and more stable as a result of it, and we'll move on. Let's just see how it comes out in the wash. I still think what will happen, we'll come to an agreement after the summer when the first drop in fee comes, but then he's not been involved in Man United's plans directly. Also, if there's any indication that there's been contact between them, we need to hammer them. We need to hammer them legally and hammer them hard, and show that we're not just here to play. If PIF really mean business, this is something that they need to get nailed down and right.
Steve, on the director of football position, Paolo Maldini, another name chucked into the mix.
It's interesting, isn't it? The last 2 names are both ex-players. We've been talking about businessmen. We've been talking about people with qualifications that have been earned at universities and at business schools and things like that. And now all of a sudden we're hearing the names of ex-players who have either fitted the bill at previous clubs or are working their way towards doing that. The other name in the frame was Jack Ross. That's an interesting one. He's said that he wants to be a director of football. Former Sunderland manager, currently working with the club. And obviously we've got Steve Nixon, who's bound to throw his hat in the ring because he's bound to think that the role of a director of football is very similar to the role he's currently doing. Who'd have thought that 5 years ago we'd be talking about employing a director of football in the manner that we are, in terms of, you know, who's best for the role, etc., etc. It's like trying to choose a centre half or a centre forward or a goalkeeper, isn't it? You know, it's become the new thing. You know, that all of a sudden these people are vital to running a football club. Look at the way that Man United are going about it. Look at the way that Liverpool have employed a former sporting director as the head of sport in the bigger organisation, and now they're going and picking off sporting directors from other clubs like Brighton, etc., and Bournemouth, and you know that it's become the new face of football, hasn't it? That you've got to have a sporting director, you've got to have a director of football, and those people are responsible for the vision of the club. It used to be the manager that was responsible for the vision of the club, but unfortunately, the manager has that additional pressure of what happens on the pitch, because that's what most of us supporters are most interested in. You know, how high up the league we can get, how we do in cup competitions, whether or not we're going to be up there and challenging for European places. So the manager's under double the responsibility, hence the why this role of somebody overseeing the big bucket of cash that is given to or made available within a club every season to take the club forward. So it's basically taking it out of the hands of the manager and putting it in the hands of someone who, yes, the manager's supposed to be liaising with. And Mitch is right. It's an important role to fill because of that. But it's the relationship that sporting director or director of football is going to have with Eddie Howe as the person who's responsible for what goes on the field. So you can't have a situation where the manager is wanting one type of player, but the sporting director thinks that the club should go off in a different direction. That's why it becomes so important that we get the decision right. I don't think they're going to rush it. I think we might find that it's the tail end of the season before anyone slots in. It might even be longer. Who knows? The most important thing at Newcastle United at the moment is where we finish in the league, how we see out the next sort of 8, 9, 10 games, whether or not we're going to be in Europe next season, whether we're going to be concentrating next season on purely the Premier League and the cup competitions. That's what we're all interested in, and I think that's where the club's focus is at the moment. Up in the director's box and up on the board, they might be seeing it slightly different, but are keeping it well away from the football side of the club at the moment. And I think there's an awful lot going on there, and I think there's a lot more going on than probably we're aware of. And I think that is the club in a happy place at the moment. Some days it is, some days it isn't. Do we fans help that happy place? Some days we do, some days we don't. Are we happy? Some days we are, some days we're not. I think it's just the nature of football at the moment. The pressures that are coming to bear. I just want this season to be over, to be perfectly honest. I want to concentrate on watching the Euros, see who we pick up in the close season, see what direction the football club's going to be taking, both on and off the pitch, see whether they can sort out their ticketing, see whether they can sort out some of the other little idiosyncrasies that have suddenly cropped up over the last few months and probably, well, the last 18 months. That's what I want. I want this club to be back on an even keel, and I want us all being happy again. That's not happening at the moment on a number of fronts, and that's what they've got to concentrate on. That's what they've got to get right.
Yeah,
Steve, that strap on the bottom of Sean says directors are crucial. I'm reminded about Len Shackleton's autobiography, yes. And when he had a chapter about directors, and it was just a blank page.
Yeah, what directors know about football?
Just a blank page.
Okay, we'll have a quick ad break, and then we'll look ahead to the West Ham game before we finish the show. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. Go to their website, skipsandbins.com, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, or telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Go to their website, mrvickies.co.uk, email info@mrvickies.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to United Group Travel. Go to their website, unitedgrouptravel.com, email info@unitedgrouptravel.com, or phone 01670 632 460, or mobile 0791 666 4174. They're a local company from Morpeth, and there are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. Big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button under the video. Click the thumb up to like the video and click share to share to your social media. If you want to help the channel financially, you can pay a one-off £25 fee. You get a cup, a scarf, a pen and a membership card and entry into the NUFC Matters monthly draw. Email john@nufcmatters.com for more details, or if you've got a smartphone, scan the QR code now and it takes you straight to the membership pack. We also support the food bank on this channel. Go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and you'll find the matchday bucket. You can make a donation virtually today. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify and other podcast providers. We also do events during the year. NUFC Matters Live will be at the O2 City Hall on Friday the 2nd of August for an evening with Rob Lee, one night in Antwerp. Tickets start at £15 and you can get them from ticketmaster.co.uk. An evening with the entertainers takes place on Friday the 24th of January 2025 at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House in Newcastle. Telephone 0844 249 1000 or visit the website tynetheatreandoperahouse.uk to buy tickets today. You can also catch me on the North East Footy Breakfast Show live on Toon Radio weekdays 7 till 9 a.m. on DAB, smart speakers and the toonuk.com. And tickets for the end of season due 20th of July. Tyneside Irish Centre are selling fast. Supermac and Gibbo will be there. George will do an Ask George session and the Long Sands are playing an acoustic session. Dementia Matters are the beneficiaries this year. Tickets a tenner from newcastlelegends.com or nufcmatters.com. People saying, how can I donate if I can't go? Buy a ticket. And all the ticket money will be going direct to the charity. And the Peter Beardsley tickets for this event are on sale on Voucher. Just look for Peter Beardsley on Voucher in Newcastle. Tickets are available for £19. And I've just put the link in the chat for the Newcastle United NUFC Matters auction. It's got 2 more days to go. Finishes on Sunday. Some great signed gear on there, including stuff signed by Shearer, Beardsley, Waddle, Tino and Nobby Solano. So get yourself onto there, click the link and make sure that you don't miss out on a good deal. Okay, we're going to look ahead to the West Ham game now. And as always, Toon Stato has sent us his video.
Hello everyone, with the pick of the stats before tomorrow's game with West Ham. 10 final games till the end of the season and the fight for Europe is on. Newcastle have lost only once in 9 Premier League games against West Ham. That was back at St James's Park in August 2021. At the same time, West Ham have lost only once at St James's Park in their last 5 games. That was back in April 2021 during COVID when they lost 3-2. When it comes to Newcastle, our strong form has been very consistent this year, with 73% of the points coming at St James's Park. Only Fulham have collected more points at home, 74%. Newcastle also, believe it or not, is leading on clean sheets at home in the Premier League with 7, and alongside Manchester City and Tottenham is the only team to have scored in every home game so far. At the same time, West Ham are 9 games without a clean sheet, with only Sheffield United and Burnley ahead of them on this type of stat. When it comes to players, West Ham seem pretty dependent on Lucas Paqueta, with him in the team, in the past 67 games, they collect an average of 1.6 points per game, and without him, they go to 0.6, which in a low-scoring game like football, it's massive, and Lucas Paqueta is a doubt for tomorrow. When it comes to set plays, they have James Ward-Prowse, who has created the most chances from set plays in the Premier League, 37, alongside Alfie Doughty from Luton, and he leads also the assist charts from set plays with 6. Let's see what tomorrow has for us. Away the lads.
Thanks, Andrea, for that. Good to have you on as always. And yes, Newcastle United, early start tomorrow. First game of the Easter weekend for the Premier League, 12:30 kickoff live on TNT Sports. Eddie Howe's press conference today. Well, we know Tonali is banned until next season. Nick Pope injured, due back at the end of April. Callum Wilson, Joe Linton and Sven Botman all out. Botman, of course, until potentially December, if not later. Lewis Miley is the latest injury victim. He's reported back with an unspecified problem, which he sustained on England under-20 duty. And he is hopeful, though. There was some good news. Eddie Howe was hopeful that Harvey Barnes, Kieran Trippier and Tino Livramento would all be involved in some way, shape or form on Saturday. He also confirmed that Martin Dubravka is available, despite leaving the Slovakia squad before the game against Norway on Tuesday. The threat of suspensions still hangs over Bruno Guimaraes and Anthony Gordon. Bruno, 1 yellow card away from a 2-match suspension. Anthony Gordon has 2 bookings to go. They've got to get to game 32 to avoid another ban. And Saturday will be our 29th game. Of course, we play another game quite quickly on Tuesday night against Everton. As for West Ham, Edson Alvarez is suspended. Maxwell Cornet, Mohamed Kudus and Naif Argued and Lucas Paqueta are all rated as doubtful. We will wait and see. Lots of managers like Eddie Howe don't often tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth at press conferences. West Ham arrived unbeaten in their last 4 Premier League games, but winless in 2, having drawn with both Aston Villa and Burnley at the London Stadium. On the road this season, David Moyes has guided his side to 6 wins, 2 draws and 6 defeats. They've posted 1 clean sheet during those 14 games, and that was away to Arsenal. If you're not going to the game, City Centre bars with live TV coverage include Humphreys, the Dog and Parrot, and Freight in the big market. And we do have VAR at this game. David Coote is in charge of that. And the referee is Robert Jones, which is his 4th game in charge of a Newcastle fixture for the Merseysider. He took charge of the 1-0 loss at Man City and the 2 wins against Manchester United. 1-0 Premier League win, of course, at home, and the 3-0 League Cup win at Old Trafford. Don't forget, there is a bit of disruption tomorrow on public transport. The Metro, bit of a nightmare tomorrow, really. There is Metro closure. The buses that will replace trains between Hewitt and South Gosford in both directions for 4 days from today to Monday, the 1st of April. There are track renewals going on. That's what the issue is. Trains will be running frequently, all of the stations, but during the 4 days off, there's going to be no trains stopping at Monument, platform 3 or 4. Trains will run through the platforms without stopping. Any customers who would usually travel to or from Monument are advised to go to Manners or St James's. There will be replacement bus services. The number 900 will run between Hewitt and South Gosford and Regent Centre in both directions. And if you're coming by train, I know a lot of you come up by train from King's Cross, just check with your provider as with regards to that. And the food bank, as usual, the stall and bucket shakers are going to be on Strawberry Place, and Jamie Rubin will once again double all cash donations made on match day. So, George, Newcastle play West Ham. I said yesterday, and I've said all week really, must-win game this for Newcastle. The next 2 home games, but we're only looking at West Ham, of course. We need 6 points out of these 2 games if we've got any European ambition, George.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And as always, Mr. Positive, Mr. Optimistic, I think we'll win this handsomely, actually. They're not good travellers, despite the, what's said. They've lost some bad games away from home. There's no doubt about that. But let's make tomorrow another one. I'm confident we'll win this one, and I'm looking for. Do you want a prediction?
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm looking for 3-0 tomorrow. That's how confident I am, and I think Gordon and Longstaff and Bruno will get the 3 goals.
Okay, Mitch. Like I've said, this is a must-win game for Newcastle. Really, it's against one of our rivals, and the way that the fixtures have fallen, especially today, Saturday, sorry, and over the weekend, there are some pretty key fixtures. And were Newcastle to lose tomorrow, and other teams win, you would say, we're giving ourselves a mountain to climb. Chelsea play Burnley, Sheffield United play Fulham, Spurs play Luton. Villa Wolves play each other. Of course, we'll probably want to see Villa win that one. Brentford play Manchester United. Some key fixtures this weekend.
Absolutely. And obviously, as people may have picked up on, Stu and I have a mate called Les over here who's a West Ham fan. And we've seen a few West Ham games with him. And I tell you what, they come across like me. They're the literal version of the little girl with the little curl. When they're good, they're very, very good. And when they're bad, they're horrid. They've had some absolutely fantastic results and some real thumpings. It's almost like they're like us under Pardew, that we could turn out a great result and then get absolutely thumped the next week out of nowhere. And I think their doubtful list is really important on this. Who really is doubtful and who doesn't play, I think, is key to how this game's gonna run and how easy it may or may not be for us. My dad's right. They don't seem to be in the Premier League the best travellers. In Europe, different, because I think it's always different in Europe with away games and things like that. But yeah, they have this ability to suddenly pluck a ridiculous performance out of the bag. 1 minute, and then the next minute just get absolutely thumped out the sight. So you hope tomorrow that's what we're going to do.
Have you got the dice?
I've got the dice, but before I go to the dice, someone asked us off on another platform, what was I eating before? And I kept putting the camera off because I found a stash of sherbet fountains here.
Oh, wow.
And so I've been having a little pick at them, and that was licorice I was having before, and I kept putting the camera off because I didn't want to look like Al Pacino at the end of Scarface. So anyway, yeah, I've been having a little bit sherbet fountain. So the dice is here. Let's see what the dice is. The dice says 1-1.
Well, I've gone for 2-2.
Oh, an Albert.
Yes, I do think it's going to be a 2-2, mate. I don't think Newcastle will win tomorrow. I think it's a 2-2. But what about you?
I think tomorrow's going to be one of the very, very horrid performances. And I'm going to say it 4-0.
Oh, wow. Wow, 4-0. There's a lot of confidence on you. Is the confidence coming from the Mitchells because you've heard that Harvey Barnes, Livramento and Trippier are likely to play?
No, it's because we're both like sherbet fountains.
There you go. Yeah, it honestly, they have this ability to suddenly crumble if you get on top of them.
Yeah. And
I think if we play the way we know we can and get on top of them early, they will struggle to get back into the game. And I've seen it firsthand.
Okay. Steve.
It's always good when you play West Ham, isn't it? Because you never know which West Ham's going to turn up. As Mitch says, that when they're good, they're very good, and when they're bad, they're horrid. And this season, perfect example. They're all over the place at times. I've seen a few of the West Ham games this season as well, and they are probably the most schizophrenic of the 20 clubs in the Premier League. They are, they literally play with two heads, and you don't know which head they've brought with them to the game. And I don't know whether the pressure piles on Moyes, and then he pulls out a good result, and then the pressure fades, and then it kind of slips off. And like you say, Steve, they've had they're unbeaten in 4, but yeah, they've 2 wins, 2 draws. But if you moved it to 6 out of 6, they've also 2 defeats in 6 as well. So the BBC will want you to play on where they are in 4, but they'll not want you to mention the defeats, because again they want to pile pressure on Newcastle. I always admired West Ham. I always admired them as a club. I always admired their fans, I think they're a loyal bunch. There's no question about that. They're always a good laugh when you meet some of them. Some of them maybe it's not so that we've met in the past as well. But I can remember. Well, I'll not go into that one. But no, they're one of, as far as I'm concerned, one of London's proper clubs. And I think that's why I enjoy the games against West Ham. That said, it's not very often at this time of the year when you're sitting on 40 points that you're talking about a 6-pointer. But it is in terms of where the season's heading. Lose tomorrow and you're basically cut adrift from any sort of relative success or any way of climbing the league. Win tomorrow and you're just keeping yourself in that little bunch who are sitting on 44 and 46 points. You're creeping up. You'll be sitting on 43 with a game against a team on Tuesday night that we should absolutely go to town on. And I think we need 6 points from the next 2 games, but this is a 6-pointer because I think how we do tomorrow will have a bearing on how we do on Tuesday. I'm optimistic, Steve. I'm going to play my optimistic hand. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. And I think Mitch is right. Depending on how you start, if you get into West Ham very quickly, they do have this tendency not to be able to come back. And that's, especially at home, that's when the fans used to get at them. And I think it would be great to think that we would go 2-0 up very, very early on. And that top deck and level 7 starts to clear very, very quickly. But I'm going to go for a 2-1 win.
Very optimistic on here. I'm the pessimist. People saying, is it reverse psychology, Steve? Well, we'll have to wait and see. I might claim it on Sunday. I might not. Tomorrow, 9 o'clock, those were the days me and George have pre-recorded a show. So that'll be on in the morning. The talk-in with Gibbo and Ando will take place after the match tomorrow. So it'll be 3 o'clock in the Irish Centre. Gibbo and Ando will be in there, free entry. And if you've got kids, they are more than welcome in the afternoon, so feel free to take them along to the Irish Centre. And we'll finish with a little bit of Elliot. I was sorry to hear on the news that a man was run over by a boat in Venice. My condolences are with his family.
Oh, God.
Thanks, Elliot.
Yeah.
That's a wrap on nufc Matters 3 Amigos on Friday. Good Friday. And I hope everyone has a great Easter. As I say, back with George tomorrow on a pre-record, then off to the match. And Sunday, we will be back with an hour-long professionals, 6 till 7. And then the fans forum, of course, will be on Bank Holiday Monday. But for now, enjoy your Easter, eat plenty of chocolate, and see you guys on Sunday. Take care, lads.
All the
See
best.
everybody. Great night. Great night.